Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this evening for a conversation with Vivian Howard to celebrate her new cookbook, This Will Make It Taste Good. My name is Talia, and I'm the events manager here at Flyleaf. Before we begin, I'd love to give you all a quick overview of a couple events we have coming up in the next few weeks. We have David Menconi tomorrow night for his book all about the North Carolina music scene in conversation with John Worster of Superchunk and Tom Maxwell of Squirrel Nut Zippers. And on November 5th, Flyleaf is sponsoring a virtual post-election discussion with some writers, including Jill McCorkle, Jean Nickel, Belle Boggs, and more. Make sure to check out our Crowdcast profile to register for those events, as well as to see the full schedule and access past event recordings. A couple of other quick Flyleaf notes. It took a while, but you can officially come stop by and shop with us in person. Our hours for browsing are Tuesday through Saturday from 11 to 3. If you feel inclined to donate a few dollars to the store to keep us going with programming, we do appreciate that. There's a donate button at the bottom of your screen. And we also just launched a new fundraiser for staff. We're selling t-shirts and sweatshirts with the Flyleaf Dragonfly logo, which you can see behind me. The profits from those sales will be distributed among our staff members. They make great holiday gifts. Thank you all so much for supporting us. And without further ado, I will go ahead and introduce our author tonight. Vivian Howard is the New York Times bestselling author of Deep Run Roots, which was named Cookbook of the Year by the International Association of Culinary Professionals. She co-created and stars in the public television shows Somewhere South and A Chef's Life, for which she has won Peabody, Emmy, and James Beard Awards. She runs the restaurants Chef and the Farmer, Benny's Big Time, Lenore, and Handy and Hot, as well as delightful social media accounts under the handle @ChefInTheF. Vivian lives in Deep Run, North Carolina with her husband, Ben, and their twins, Theo and Flo. Vivian's new book, This Will Make It Taste Good, profiles 10 flavor heroes, food staples that factor into the book's 125 recipes. Tonight, we'll hear about one of those heroes, the Herbaceous. We will do a Q&A at the end of the event, but please go ahead and write your questions in the chat or with the Ask a Question feature at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to those at the end. All right, I'm going to minimize myself and give Vivian the floor. Take it away, Viv.
You called me Viv.
I heard your producer calling you Viv. I thought I'd get in on it.
Yeah, no, my name lends itself to that nickname very well. So you can Viv anytime you want. Thank you all so much for joining me tonight. I'm in my office here in Kinston. We call it VHQ. I tried to do one of these events at my home in Deep Run, but we don't have high-speed broadband internet, so it didn't work. So thank you for joining me here tonight, and thank you to Flyleaf Books for hosting me. So yes, we're here to talk about my new book, This Will Make It Taste Good. Writing this book was the most joyful, creative endeavor of my life so far. I loved writing Deep Run Roots, and I will forever be tremendously proud of it. But I really looked at it more as an historical document that, laid bare the culinary traditions of Eastern North Carolina. And this book is really more about the way I cook at home. So as a chef, a restaurant chef, over the years, I developed all these little building blocks or flavor heroes, recipes that are flavor packed, that as a restaurant chef, I would use, that we always had around, that I would use to make really simple ingredients shine. And when I stopped working in the restaurant as much to do things like write these books and talk to y'all on Zoom, I started cooking at home more, and I found myself driving from Deep Run to Kinston to get these flavor heroes, these building blocks. And so when I set out to write my second book, I really, first of all, I wanted it to be simple. I wanted it to speak to home cooks who were looking to perhaps cook without recipes and looking to be more empowered in the kitchen. And so I tried to write like a basic, simple cookbook, and I was so bored by it. I found myself offering store-bought suggestions for things that I thought would make the recipes more exciting. I just didn't see myself as a cook in these recipes. And at the end of the table of contents for this simple Vivian Howard book was a chapter called "This Will Make It Taste Good." So it's like, okay, if you really want to make this book like the way I cook, make these things and insert them into these recipes. And finally, I just decided to invert the entire idea for the book on its head and write about my flavor heroes. So this book is about 10 flavor heroes, easy things, easy things that you can make in your kitchen that you can then use all week long, all month long, several months long, to make very simple food exciting. So we have, because these are recipes that I've developed and they're inspired by, different condiments or building blocks that we know across the world, but they often combine those traditions. I've given them really novel names that actually speak to what they do in food. So we have a chapter called Little Green Dress, which is kind of like a chimichurri and a salsa verde had a baby in a bed of olives. Sorry, my flower is blocking my view. And it's called Little Green Dress because that little black dress, it goes well or looks good, tastes good with anything. And at the start of every chapter, there is this portrait of me emulating or dressing like that condiment. I know this sounds so bizarre, and it's because it is in such a great creative way. The photographer for this book, photography team, Baxter Miller and Ryan Stansel, they've been in my pod since COVID started because we were still shooting this book in March. And I think that they have done just an amazing job at making this book even more beautiful to look at than it is to read. And so I encourage you, that's one of the things that, when I wrote my first book, I wrote it and I was like, this is all I got. I can't help you with the design, or even I didn't understand how the photography piece worked. And this time, having learned through the first book process, I know. And I'm so very proud of all the images and photography in here. So Little Green Dress, you learn how to make Little Green Dress. Then you read a story about what Little Green Dress is, what it means to me, how it functions in food. And then within that chapter, there are a page of no-brainers ways to use it, things you don't even need a recipe for, like putting Little Green Dress on a baked potato with Parmesan cheese and olive oil, or smashing it into avocado toast to give it briny acidity that avocado toast actually needs, in my opinion. And then there are, 10 to 12 recipes in every chapter using Little Green Dress. So I'm not only giving you the recipes to make these condiments, but I'm showing you how to showcase them and use them in the ways that we cook at home. I believe there's in almost every chapter with every hero, there's an egg recipe. There's a ground meat recipe. There's a cabbage or a broccoli recipe. All of these ingredients speak to wherever we live. I live in rural North Carolina, so I wanted to make sure that if you were cooking from anywhere in the United States, at least, you could find these ingredients. So another one of my favorite chapters is the red weapons. They're called red weapons because for years as a chef, when I would cook with other chefs, or when I was designing dishes for my menu, I would always my cooks could finish my sentence because I would say, you know what this needs? They're like, spicy tomatoes. And that's what we used to call them, spicy tomatoes. But now I call them red weapons because they are my secret weapon. Not so secret anymore, however. But tonight we are talking about one of my favorites called Herbaceous. So you'll see it looks like a green kind of creamy sauce. And at the start of every chapter, I give descriptors as to like what this particular hero does in a recipe. And here I have, it's full, it's round, it's herbal, it's nuanced, it's fatty, and it's smooth. Some of these are very different, you know, textured, crunchy, umami, sea-driven. So within the book, I tried to kind of represent all the aspects of taste and texture. So this one is smooth and green and herbal, and it's going to remind you a lot of pesto. But my goal with Herbaceous is to get you to use more herbs, no matter what they are. So, you know, I get so frustrated when I go to the grocery store and I see these little tiny plastic packets of herbs with like literally like 5 basil leaves in the packet, and maybe like the tarragon one has like 4 sprigs of tarragon, and half of them are brown and awful, and the whole thing costs like $3.50. And I'm like, this is the biggest ripoff in the grocery store. So in writing the Herbaceous chapter, one of my goals is to get all y'all to cook with more herbs, to buy herbs in bundles at the grocery store, or better yet, buy herbs that are planted in dirt at the grocery store. I see them at Lowe's Foods and a number of other grocery stores all the time, because if you buy them planted in dirt, you can put them in your windowsill and they will continue to produce. So I believe that if we introduce more herbs into our cooking, we will eat healthier and we'll enjoy our food more, because herbs bring flavor and an odd kind of like sometimes sweetness. I think basil brings a sweetness. Sometimes I think they bring like a type of acidity in the form of mint or rosemary, and they have 0 calories. So we should all be cooking with more herbs all the time. And if you have a windowsill, you can grow your own herbs. So Herbaceous is, you know, inspired by basil pesto, but basil pesto has, you know, basil and pine nuts and Parmesan cheese and olive oil, and Herbaceous is really rooted in whatever soft herbs you have around. So when I speak of soft herbs, I'm talking about things like basil or mint or chervil or tarragon or chives, things with a soft texture that's easily pureed. Thyme, rosemary, sage. I look at these as more like hard herbs with a hard stem, and they're not appropriate for this. But what I want you to, how I want you to put together Herbaceous is, first of all, anything from your herb garden that's soft, but also any of those herbs that you buy that are just like kind of hanging around in your refrigerator that you haven't quite used. Use them up. Use them up. It's also based in garlic confit, which garlic confit was almost a chapter all on its own in this book, because it's been a staple recipe that we have used in our restaurant kitchen since the day we opened. And, you know, garlic is a tricky subject in that, you know, in the grocery store, we have the opportunity to buy garlic in the clove that you have to peel. We have the opportunity to buy garlic that is already peeled. We have the opportunity to buy this like kind of chopped or crushed garlic that's sitting in some kind of oil. And, you know, all of those choices have different benefits. I've personally never bought the chopped garlic in the olive oil, and I've hated on some of my friends for using it, but then I've totally enjoyed dinner. So I'm going to step away if that's the route you want to go. The peeled garlic that you can buy, I think that it does not taste great when served raw, but if you're going to cook it, if it meets heat, then I absolutely do use it, because peeling garlic cloves is a pain in the rear. Am I right? I'm right. Okay, so for this garlic confit, what I do is I take those peeled garlic cloves and I put them in a saucepan, one of the smallest you can find. You don't want a lot of surface area. And I cover it with olive oil. And I bring that up to a simmer and I turn it off. I bring it up to a simmer and I turn it off. And I bring it up to a simmer and I turn it off. And I do this, about 4 times. It takes about 20, 25 minutes. And what I want is for my garlic to just get soft and spreadable. And what you end up with are 2 products. You have the garlic confit that you can fold into, mashed potatoes or into sauces. And then you have a flavored oil. And you also have the base for Herbaceous. So Herbaceous is an herb and garlic confit puree. And I have a little bit here. It has basil and mint and garlic confit and lemon and Parmigiano Reggiano. And it tastes so round and frankly, herbaceous. And it makes a lively, bright herb note to anything you add it to. And I've used this NutriBullet here, but you could use any kind of high-powered blender you have, because you do want this to be quite smooth. And see, that smells, it makes me it improves my mood when I smell it. So I hope you make it. All right, so within the Herbaceous chapter, after you learn to make Herbaceous, I give you all kinds of ideas of no-brainers and how to use it. I also rant about the little plastic sleeves of herbs in the grocery store. And, I say slather on corn on the cob, steak, chicken, pork, or fish. It makes a great finishing sauce for any of those things. Garnish soups, especially tomato, potato, and brothy vegetable soups with Herbaceous. Slather on bread with cheese for garlic bread. Toss with stale bread and toast for croutons or breadcrumbs. Whisk into vinaigrettes. Whisk into any creamy buttermilk dressing or ranch dressing you might want to make. I mean, this is incredibly versatile. So you have these no-brainers, and then there are all these recipes how to use them. Fancy as a clam. I love the combination of clams and sweet corn. And with the addition of this Herbaceous, this is something that you can put together at home in 15 minutes. Meatloaf that is studded with Herbaceous inside. And I didn't grow up eating meatloaf, so I don't have a lot of strong feelings about it, but everyone that I made this for said it's the best meatloaf they've ever had. A leg of lamb that is marinated in Herbaceous and yogurt and then roasted, and it's fantastic. I make a little gravy with cherry tomatoes and Herbaceous and spoon it over grits or mashed potatoes. This chicken salad, chicken salad is really big in the South. But I often think it's just so overrated. And this is, as I say, a chicken salad worth talking about. There's a recipe in this chapter for Chex Mix that has Herbaceous roasted with it. And I write a story. There's a story in every chapter. Just like if you like the stories in Deep Run Roots, they're here too. This story is about my imposter syndrome related to parenting. And, there are a lot of very vulnerable stories in this book. It's a lighthearted book, but I really lay bare who I am as a working mom and a daughter and an overachiever a people pleaser. There is an incredible Caesar salad recipe with Herbaceous. And then tonight we are going, this is one of my favorite recipes in the whole book. This is 40 fettuccine. This is my kids' favorite meal. It's green because of the herbaceous, but it's also green because I puree zucchini into the sauce. So it's like kind of healthy, you know. I feel good about it. There's this beautiful, juicy, and bright citrus salad. And then tonight we are making mashed potatoes second coming. So I learned a while back that one of the most asked food questions on Google is what to do with leftover mashed potatoes. And, you know, I would say generally like just heat them up with some milk and have them again. But apparently people want more. So I came up with a recipe that is something that everybody seems to love. Andrea Weigel, who tested the recipes for this book, sent me a text in all caps lock surrounded by exclamation points like, my entire neighborhood loved this. These are going to become like a staple in my kitchen. So what I have here are some leftover mashed potatoes. You know, everybody's mashed potatoes are a little bit different, right? You know, some of them are runny, some of them are chunky, some of them, you know, are tight. And I would say these are right in the middle here. But what you want is to just like trust your instincts and kind of see how much of the other ingredients you need to add to make this work into this kind of little dough that we're going to make. So I have mashed potatoes here. They're chilled. They need to be chilled to make this. I'm going to add a little bit of additional kosher salt because we're going to add more ingredients. So you need to step up the salt element. I'm going to add a little bit of baking powder, and they're going to make these a little lighter when we cook them, a little fluffier. I'm going to add a little bit of sour cream for some tang. I'm going to stir that together, make sure everything's really incorporated very well. And I'm also now going to add my herbaceous, which is going to make these taste a lot different than leftover mashed potatoes. Bright and citrusy because there's a fair amount of lemon juice in here. The Parmesan is going to add depth of flavor and funk, and the herbaceous is going to turn everything green. Okay, so you can see I have a looser mashed potato than I started with. So what I'm going to do now to get it to the consistency that I need it to be is add a little bit of flour. So this is just AP flour in my dad gave me this jar maybe 10 years ago, and it's a Lance, you know, cracker jar. And so I'm showing it off to you there. All right, so I'm going to put some flour in here and stir it around. I want it to get a little bit stiff. I really want to be very careful about adding too much flour because I don't want this to taste like raw flour, and I don't, you know, what you want to do is just add enough so that they hold together. Because if I could, I wouldn't add any, right? But I need them to hold together because you're going to see what I'm about to do and you're going to like it. All right, I'm going to add just a little bit more. And then I'm going to dust my work surface right here with a little bit of flour because I'm going to roll these out and like think about like biscuit dough. Like you don't want to work it too much. You want it to hold together just enough. And so I'm going to kind of see where I'm at on the counter. And in the book, I give you measurements for all of this stuff. So don't worry about that. But it does depend on how your mashed potatoes start and how moist they are. So you may have to adjust the flour a little bit. So you see I have this mound of green potato dough on my counter, and I'm just going to press it out like this. and then bring it together and roll it around and flip it over just a time or two. It feels really nice and soft and pliable and verging on very sticky. So you got to be careful with that. I learned that from pastry chef. You just kind of dust your flour. Okay, so here we go. Now I have this little mound of leftover mashed potatoes. And I'm just gonna pinch off a good old handful. Think about like what you would want in a serving. I'm making these like supper or dinner serving size. But if you were having a cocktail party or just a party with your family, because that's what we are doing right now, you could actually make them very small too. And this makes an amazing past hors d'oeuvre. So I've got these little round Herbaceous. You hear that? That's my induction burner, and it really thinks a lot of itself when it lights up. So I'm going to take bacon, raw bacon, and I'm going to lay it in a crisscross fashion here. And then I'm going to take my potato patty, and I'm going to wrap it up in that bacon. And when I'm wrapping it up, I'm going to try my best to cover as much of the surface area of my potato cake as possible. And you can see I've done a pretty good job with that. See, the bacon is covering just about everything. And when I put it in my pan, I'm going to put it seam side down so that the bacon sears from the bottom and seals the cake. And I'm going to pat this out, and I should be able to make like 3 or 4 of these. You know, I don't know how many of you make mashed potatoes on Thanksgiving or make mashed potatoes probably once a week, but I find that we always have a little bit of leftover mashed potatoes. And this is an amazing, like, quick way, if you have Herbaceous in the house, to repurpose them. If I were serving this as a little past hors d'oeuvre, or even if I were serving it as a side and I had the time to deal with details, I would put a little dollop of sour cream and maybe even a snipped chive or 2 on top of my little hors d'oeuvre or my potato cake. But this is just regular old sliced bacon from the grocery store. I didn't cut this to any specific. I don't think you want to get like the super thick sliced bacon. It's just regular breakfast bacon. And we're going to wrap that up, and I'm going to put these in my pan as soon as, I turned it on, but I didn't turn it up. So as this heats, I'd love it if we could start with some of our questions, if you've got any. I see some, I can't see that far. There could possibly be something.
Yeah, we've got some questions that we can go ahead and get to. All right, let's see. Sophie says, are chives appropriate for this or too strong? Because she just bought a package. Also, what is your brand of olive oil?
Okay, let me rinse. I've got some. I'll be right here.
Yeah, of course.
Chives are absolutely appropriate, but I would use chives plus something. So I'm generally always using basil plus something, because basil is one of my favorite herbs to cook with, and so I always have a basil plant around. I always have basil around, so I would use something like basil, chives, and mint, or mint and chives or basil and chives. But absolutely, chives are an appropriate herb to use. Also, the green parts of scallion are absolutely appropriate. So I've got some butter in this pan. I'm heating it to medium high, and I'm going to add my potato cakes in just a second. And the second question was what?
Your brand of olive oil. And that actually is a question we several people have asked.
Okay, so this hold on. This is not an accurate representation of what I generally buy. I'm not saying I don't like it, but I want to show you. So olive oil, when you don't live in a super urban place and you don't have a favorite like kitchen market that you like to shop at, it's a tough thing. Like you don't know what to buy. You don't know how old it is. You don't know where it comes from. But I find that I really like this brand, California Olive Ranch, and it's available at Walmart. They have it at Food Lion, and it's domestic. I find that it's never rancid. Sometimes when you buy certain olive oils from the grocery store, they've been sitting there a long time and they've gone rancid. But I find that this is a high quality olive oil that's great for cooking or even for salad dressings. And often they'll have a descriptor on the bottom that says everyday blend or robust blend or sophisticated blend. I'm making up words, but they describe what it's best for. So this is the olive oil that I buy when I go to the grocery store, and I recommend it. And they have nothing to do with me. Maybe they will now.
Yes, sponsor Vivian. All right. Would you like another question?
Sure.
What are your favorite potatoes to use for mashed potatoes? That's a question from Kate.
Good question. So, when I first started cooking, I thought that I had read or heard somewhere that Yukon Gold potatoes were the best for mashed potatoes. But I have found over the years that I disagree. I feel like Yukon Gold become like a little more waxy when you mash them. I really love a russet potato because I find that it's a little fluffier and it has a slightly less tendency to get glutinous and waxy. So I love a russet potato, and I am a mashed potato with skin type of person, particularly if I'm making them, because it's a lot easier.
Right, that makes sense. One less step.
Yes, and the skin is also where a lot of the nutrition is. A lot of fiber, a lot of the vitamins. That's what my mom always said, and I'm assuming it's true.
Sounds true. You want one more?
Sure.
What is your process for deciding which stories or essays to include related to your recipes?
It was long. I tried to set out, I tried to figure out what I wanted to say, what stories I wanted to tell, and then I tried to associate or apply a recipe to it. So it really always started with the story. And then I found a way for the recipe portion to work. So like one of my favorite stories in the book is about my dad and all the fad diets that he went on for his whole life. And, he did Optifast, Slim Fast, all kinds of like liquid diets. And, he would lose like 50 pounds and then gain 60. And then when he turned 60, his doctor said, you've got to make a change. You got to do something. And so this essay the story is all about how what he eats and what I cook for him has changed. He doesn't eat anything white unless unless no one is looking. And then he goes out after every piece of potato
Right.
or bread or white rice. And so I really wanted to tell that story because one of the messages in this book is in part about body image and about the way that I see myself and the way that I grew up being, hyper focused on my dad always trying to lose weight and always feeling as if I needed to do the same, is part of what made me who I am. So the stories came first, and then because it's so easy to do that, because life is in many ways for me about eating, I applied recipes to them.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I could never go on a no white food diet. I love starch.
No, me neither. And truthfully, my dad's not been on one either. But he does moderate it.
And that's what's important.
So my little potato cakes are over here sizzling. They're not quite ready to turn, and I hope that they will be before we're done here.
Yeah, we've got time.
Okay. So let me see. Where's my spatula? One of the things that people have asked quite a bit about this book is, how it is different and how it is the same or alike Deep Run Roots. And we did this book signing, this drive-through book signing in Charleston and in Raleigh this past weekend. And it was in an effort to be, socially distant and make everybody safe. But about half the people in both lines had copies of Deep Run Roots in the car with them. So I felt like, oh my God, and they said, I hope this book is just like Deep Run Roots. And I thought to myself, it's really not. So I hope that you're okay with that. But for me, it's a better expression of who I am as a woman and a mother and a professional, and it really represents how I cook. And I think it's also quite funny. If in fact you find my brand of humor funny. So I hope all the people who love Deep Run Roots for the stories and the history pick up on my personality and humor in This Will Make It Taste Good. Absolutely.
And growth is good. That's a good thing.
Yes, absolutely. I wanted to make sure with this second book that I had, that I was able to evolve in the book as a writer, as I had evolved as a human being. I think that's important for really connecting with people and feeling connected to the work that you're doing.
I actually have a related question here from Chris, who says, how has your taste changed over the years? What do you like more now and what less? It's kind of related to the growing.
Well, as a young cook, as a young chef, I was really concerned about what other chefs thought and how successful they felt I was. And now I'm just much more interested in making food that people want to eat and writing recipes for people that don't want to spend all night in the kitchen and don't want a whole lot of dishes to cook. That's one of my primary things in this book. There's a lot of one pan or one pot dinners because I hate washing dishes. And as an eater, my taste has changed tremendously. I think back in the day, I really ate to kind of to feel as if I was eating something very inspired and very hit all the elements that a chef looks for when they're eating. But now, I just want to eat things that are satisfying and that have the proper amount of acid or texture to make me want more. And I want, I eat a lot less now. And so I want it all to just be like super memorable and super flavorful and less in my head and less and more in my mouth.
Right. Yeah, on your tongue, of course.
Okay, look, so I have my second, this is called, mashed potatoes second coming. And you can see that my little bacon packages full of Herbaceous mounted mashed potatoes have crisped up, and they are both crispy from the bacon rendering, but also from the flour crisping around it. And I am going to take these home because my kids probably haven't eaten dinner yet. And I'm going to pipe or spoon a little bit of sour cream on top, and we're going to have a delicious side. And they're going to ask why they're green, and I'm going to tell them not to worry about it.
Yep. Get those vegetables in, or herbs in this case.
Or herbs. Or like me with my kids, it's all about just pushing them outside the lines of what they're comfortable eating, which is mac and cheese and cheeseburgers.
Right, of course.
But thank you so much for having me tonight.
Yeah, of course. Do you have time for a couple more questions?
Sure, of course.
Before we wrap up?
Absolutely.
All right. Let's do a couple really quick ones about just the recipe itself, and then maybe one or two that are a little longer answers. So someone said, Jeannie said, have you ever substituted gluten-free flour in this recipe?
I have not, but I don't see any reason that you wouldn't be able to. I think you could also substitute cornmeal. What we need is, we're not trying to build up like any, texture or, stretch. So we're just trying to make this hold together enough so that we can wrap it in the bacon and pan fry it. So I think any gluten-free flour would work as well.
Makes sense. Susan says, is there a vegetarian substitution for the bacon, or is there a way to make this without the bacon?
Yes, actually, funny story. When I first wrote this recipe for the cookbook, the bacon was not a part of it. So the recipe in the book without the bacon works without the bacon. But when we were shooting the cookbook, it was like the end of the day, and we really needed to get like all of our shots because, you're on a schedule. And I wasn't following my own recipe. My potato cakes were too loose, and I had some sliced bacon, and I've made like potato bacon cakes at Chef and the Farmer a million times. And so I thought, you know what, I'll just change the recipe. I'll wrap it in bacon and pan fry it for this picture, and then I'll change the recipe in the book. It's amazing how things like that happen. But, I really wanted this book to have, a majority vegetarian or vegan recipes. And so I didn't initially put the bacon around this, but I do think it makes a great addition, but they're equally delicious without it.
So you just pan fry it without the bacon wrap.
Absolutely.
Sounds great. And then one quick question. No, go ahead, eat. I don't mind. I'm a little jealous, but that's it. I have a question here from Laurel, which is, we heard recently from another person that it was better to use canola or grapeseed oil for high heat cooking. What's your opinion on that?
My opinion is that is absolutely correct. But high heat cooking really is not like what we did tonight. That would be like deep frying or subjecting something to like high heat for a long period of time. I think any quick saute, any quick pan fry, you can use like a combination of butter and olive oil, or you can always use canola or grapeseed oil. I am a big fan of grapeseed oil because it is really flavorless. Sometimes I can sense in salad dressings and things like that don't meet heat, I can taste canola oil. I don't think that a lot of people can, but I have a sensor for it. So grapeseed is my favorite oil to use. I always have grapeseed and olive oil in my kitchen, and swap back and forth based on what I'm doing.
Let's see. And then let's do a couple that are a little bit more questions about you. What food do you make when you miss home, while traveling or when you're away? What's your go-to?
The thing that reminds me of home the most is like my mom's chicken and rice, which is, a chicken that's boiled till it's falling to pieces, and then you cook the rice in the broth that the chicken cooked in, and it just smells and tastes and reminds me of home in a way that I'm not even sure home does. But I'll tell you, I've been at home for a long time, as most of us have, and I've opened a biscuit and ham pie shop in Charleston this summer, and I was so happy to get some takeout. And to eat in restaurants or not in restaurants, but get food from restaurants that were, still operating.
Right.
That, while it did not remind me of home, it definitely made being away from home more enjoyable.
Yeah, we're all going through that a little bit right now. And then a kind of follow-up question to that is, could you say a little bit about how your life has been affected by 2020 generally, everything going on with COVID?
Yeah, it's been, it sucks. It's
right.
My family is, so far everybody's healthy and I think hopefully we'll see the other side of this. I've closed one restaurant permanently. I'm getting ready to open Chef and the Farmer tomorrow, for the first time since March. And, it's really made me reevaluate my restaurant footprint and how I want to move forward after this. I think one of the things, I'm always looking for the gifts or the silver linings here, or the opportunities found in this challenge that is COVID. And, it's given me the opportunity to have a little bit of time to look at what I was doing and to just like stop the train for a minute so we can figure out what track we want to get on.
Right.
And so it's changed a lot. I think it will continue to, because I don't think it's over. And I think we're going to be a different culture and operate slightly differently on the other side. And maybe, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think we've learned, a lot of restaurant folks have learned that the restaurant model as it works for many of us doesn't really work. And so I'm hoping to reevaluate what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Some silver lining, I guess, but it has been a really hard year. All right, we'll wrap up. One last question, and then we'll close out. Anna says, you suggest gifting some of these. Which would you start with, and any recipe that you would suggest sending with that one?
I think all of these heroes make incredible gifts for the holidays or hostess gifts. I personally, I love to give gifts that are consumable, either a beverage or something you can eat. And so if it's consumable and something that you've already made, I think that makes, the most perfect hostess gifts. One of the chapters in the book, one of the flavor heroes, is called These Nuts. And basically it's like spiced pecans. and they make a great snack. They make a great addition to salads. They're wonderful folded into banana bread, which is one of the recipes in the book. So they are probably one of the easiest things you can make as a gift for people. I think Little Green Dress makes a wonderful gift. I think Herbaceous makes a wonderful gift. I think Candied Kraut makes a wonderful gift. I think Community Organizer makes a wonderful gift. There's not one of these that I think is actually better than the other. You just need to make sure that when you give the gift, you also give them the book so they know what the hell to do with it.
Right. Well, love that send off. Of course, we have lots of signed copies. So if you're looking to give this book as a gift, come to Flyleaf. We've got them. All right. So we're going to wrap up. I just want to end with a few quick reminders. We do have signed copies of the book, like I mentioned. We have walk-in hours now, Tuesday through Saturday from 11 to 3. We are having a fundraiser for staff, which is t-shirts and sweatshirts with the Flyleaf logo. I'll put the link in the chat here. Great holiday gift once again. And I just want to give a big thank you to Vivian and her whole team for making this happen. We really appreciate it. It's been lovely.
Thank you. Thank you for having
me. Thank you. No. Thanks so much for coming out. We really appreciate it. And thank you to everybody who's been watching at home.
Thank you.
I'm going to go home and cook some dinner. Bye.
Yeah, me too.